might be happening out there, but what have you got for us right now?
Well, there's always scenario A, and there's always a scenario where things don't work out, right? So we need to talk about both sides. There's nothing wrong with that. I believe that's very healthy, in fact. The good news, there was Donald Trump was playing golf yesterday, and some gentleman was filming him coming off one of the holes, and he said, hello, thank you, Mr. President, for all you do. And then Donald Trump replied, I am not finished yet, so take that to the bank. So I thought that was really good.
That is good, and that's very, very Donald Trump. I know where I stand on this issue. It's extraordinary. You know, I scrolled along, I think it was Facebook or Twitter, I can't remember, for a brief moment today, and saw yet more of these anomalies, and other just strange things that are occurring, never mind the facts of more military and all the things we've discussed. But it's getting very strange. We'll see how it plays out.
Definitely even strange. So I want to address one of the astute observers emailed you yesterday regarding Ulysses S. Grant and the 1871 Act. So I got the 8 years wrong. He was actually president from 1869 to 1877. He tried for a third term and failed to do that. So he was actually the one that was involved, clearly must have signed the 1871 Act to make the District of Columbia, which is interesting. So if you look at Ulysses S. Grant, it was a great documentary done about 2 years ago. It was four nights. I watched it all. It was terrific. It showed that he was this close he looked like he was a dropout or a failure in the Army. He was an outpost all the way out Northwest in Washington State, I believe. And he had a very difficult time. And it wasn't until the Civil War that actually he resurrected himself as a leader, as a strategist for military, so on and so forth. So his life was basically kind of broken up into the war, and then the war really got him super focused, and he completely outmaneuvered and outstrategized Robert E. Lee, the South, and everything else. And then he became president because the American people wanted to repay him for that. And so the question is, why would someone of Ulysses S. Grant's stature sign something like this, which basically gave the keys to England, right? The District of Columbia, the port city. And maybe he didn't understand everything at the time, but what are some of the other reasons why he might have signed it, right? So if we understand how the cabal works, and the cabal is really the Canaanites that have operated out of Venice, for at least a few hundred years, that controlled the banks of London, that controlled the Vatican, right? And controlled the banking systems and so on. They operated by blackmail. And we've seen that today in the Epstein business model, right? Maxwell and Epstein for the last 20 years of how they, the pedophiles, how they film them, how they blackmail them, how they control them, including likely Justice Roberts. And I'm not the only one saying it. Linwood, the attorney, has pointed out, Roberts, what are you doing with adopted children and so on and so forth. So things of that nature is very interesting. So and then there's the research that the Rothschilds might have been for 200 years in control of the British royal family. How is that possible? Well, they made sure that the royal bloodline became a contaminated bloodline, and that they would become batards or bastards in a way, and that they weren't as royal bloodline as people has been told, and they use that to control the British monarchy. And they've probably done this with other royal families around the world for the past couple hundred years. And this is how these people operate. Then you got to throw in the assassination of Abe Lincoln in 1865, I believe, right? And put these three things together. I could absolutely see someone like Ulysses S. Grant being threatened, blackmailed. Who knows? He had a rough life, right? And who knows what dirt they got on him, maybe, right? And then the potential to be assassinated like Lincoln. So at some point, he went along with Congress and signed the bill. So that's what I have to say there.
Well, thanks for clearing up the term there on Grant and responding to one of our viewers. But 1871 is a trigger date, folks, and we've covered this extensively, even with Lieutenant Scott Bennett last night. For those that maybe are just learning about this, joining us perhaps the first time, all of our shows are archived. I suggest you go listen to some of the previous broadcasts, and the titles of the show give you an idea what was covered in part. But continue, right. James.
So today I thought was extremely interesting along the lines of Grant and all this blackmail and all this cabal controlling history. So they control the media today, but they control the written history for the last couple hundred years. And Edgar Allan Poe's name popped up today, and people say that Poe is what didn't die of drugs, didn't die poorly, but was on to the Freemasons and the Luciferians, and he was writing about that in a lot of his stories. So I thought that was interesting that this is suddenly coming out today in this time. Hey, Lourdes, can you get earplugs for him? Excuse me. Senator Tom Cotton. Let's move on to Senator Tom Cotton.
Alrighty.
The Green Zone in D.C. Senator Tom Cotton basically back in June said we need the troops to come in and quell all the riots in the country. And what was interesting about that was in the New York Times, and that blew up because he's a Republican, the GOP, a conservative Arkansas senator, and the New York Times actually ended up firing their op-ed editor over this. Well, this week, Senator Tom Cotton's telling, well, the National Guard has completed its mission. It's time for them to be sent home. So he's under the belief that they were only there for the inauguration, only there for the safety. You know, all the issues have died down. They should go home. So I'm wondering, is Tom Cotton not in tune with what has changed? Meaning, one is the 1871 Act, where the land that is the District of Columbia has no longer a foreign entity, but now been returned to the Republic of America. And yet it's under belligerent occupation. So therefore the military built a green zone around this, knowing that would be the case. And what's strange is Tom Cotton is a U.S. Army Ranger. So what is his disconnect with understanding some very basic principles? Do you have any idea?
No, I don't. Or perhaps he's saying one thing and believing in another. I mean, we don't know what we don't know. We know what our eyes tell us when we're on the street or if we're watching undoctored film footage. We know about that, and then there are some facts that are facts. Then there's a lot of anomalies, and then there's just far too many unanswered questions for me to think that we have this election and they're just going to steamroll us to death. I beg to differ.
No, I completely agree with you. So I tweeted back to Tom Cotton yesterday and said, hey, why don't you go read the 41st Congress of 1871 Act? Oh, and by the way, while you're at it, go read about the foreclosure of the United States as a foreign corporation, but also go read the Hague Convention from 1899 and the belligerent occupation of war. I mean, Tom Cotton, being a former Army Ranger, certainly is familiar with that. And certainly the Iraq War, we were involved in belligerent occupation, right? In Fallujah and other towns that we controlled. So while they're trying to keep the law and order for the citizens, you're still got the enemy within, right? And so my question now is, and no one has the answer yet, I guess we're going to learn, is Tom Cotton, is Senator Tom Cotton a belligerent occupier? I don't know. But it's worth looking out for.
Time is going to tell. According to just simply an analysis of the General Flynn tweet, retweeting General George Washington, encouraging his men to hang in there for 30 more days, I believe what it meant. This brings us to either February 3rd or February 20th, depending if Flynn was pegging that to Inauguration Day or pegging that to Election Day. So we'll see. But there's going to be a lot of people we're going to find out about as we move through this. A lot of people.
So I finally think the good news, at least in New York, is Andrew Cuomo has met his Waterloo. He's finally being completely caught, pants down, hand in the cookie jar, everything. He's been taking lots and lots of money, billions and billions of dollars from the federal government. And at the same time now, finally, a congressional subcommittee, so that's bipartisan, right, has come out and gave a 4-page letter on the nursing home scandals, and he underestimated the deaths by half, right? So instead of like 4,000 people dying in nursing homes, probably 8,000 or 10,000. So it was pretty obvious. And what's happening is this is his Trojan horse policy he ignored He ignored the Centers of Medicine and Medical Services. Number one, they had a protocol. He broke that protocol. He ignored the CDC. He broke their protocol. He put in sick patients, I believe, personally, deliberately, to see what happens into these nursing homes with COVID. Now, the question is, if there's any proof of that, he clearly would be obviously up for manslaughter charges, right? And he still might be, just for his reckless policies. And they called him, in this 4-page letter, they listed 6 or 7 dates where they requested information, and he obstructed justice. He obstructed the law. He blocked. He never turned over everything. And now they're giving him, I think, to the 25th of March, turn over everything, or you're basically in deep, deep stuff.
Yeah, well, that's quite the rap sheet, and it's very serious stuff because they're talking about costing the lives of lots and lots of people, either just by carelessness or by design, and it sure looks like by design to me. Perhaps he needs to write another book and turn his award back to whatever idiot organization gave him one.
Oh, yeah.
You know. Yeah.
Oh, I agree with you. Oh, I'm the greatest leader of all time. Was that the name of the book or something? I'm the COVID king. Yeah, you are the COVID king, but not for the reasons you claim to be, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing.
Unbelievable.
So, I want to switch gears, but I believe this absolutely is tying into what's going on.